David's boots crunched over pine needles, the crisp air of the forest filling his lungs as he adjusted his backpack. The hiking trip had been Alex's idea. A weekend getaway to shake off the grind of city life. "This place has some wild legends," Alex had said, grinning over beers the night before. "Haunted woods, creepy stuff. Perfect for us." Sarah and Mike had jumped on board, their excitement infectious, but David wasn't so sure. Sarah and Mike wasn't so sure. Still, he'd tagged along, the four of them piling into his beat-up Jeep and heading for the trails. The forest stretched endless and thick, sunlight barely piercing the canopy, casting long shadows that danced across the path. They'd set up camp by noon. A cluster of tents near a gurgling creek, the fire crackling as dusk settled in. "Ghost story time?" Sarah teased, passing around a bag of marshmallows. Mike spun a tale about lost hikers, but Alex cut in, eyes gleaming. "There's a temple out there, old as hell, supposed to be cursed. Want to check it out?" David frowned, poking the fire. "Sounds like a bad idea." But the others were already on their feet, flashlights bobbing, dragging him along with their laughter. The temple loomed after a half-hour trek, crumbling stone draped in moss, vines snaking up its walls like veins. Inside, the air was damp and heavy, smelling of rot. A statue dominated the center. A creature, tall and gaunt, its bark-like skin carved with jagged lines, eyes glowing red in the flashlight beams. "Whoa," Mike breathed, stepping closer. Alex smirked, spotting a small stone relic at its base, a miniature of the creature, smooth and cold. Back at camp, the fire sputtered low, the forest unnervingly quiet. No crickets, no owls, just a stillness that pressed on their ears. David zipped into his tent, unease gnawing at him, the relic's glow flickering through Alex's sleeping bag across the site. "You're paranoid," he muttered to himself, drifting off. A roar jolted him awake, deep guttural, shaking the ground. He scrambled out, flashlight trembling in his hand. The tents were empty, sleeping bags tossed, no sign of his friends. "Alex? Sarah?" he yelled, voice cracking. The fire was dead, embers cold. A rustle snapped through the trees, loud and close. He swung the beam, catching a shadow darting between trunks. Too tall, too fast. Panic clawed his chest as he stumbled into the woods, calling their names. The beam hit something. Mike, sprawled in the dirt, chest torn open, ribs splayed like a broken cage, eyes wide and blank. David gagged, dropping the flashlight, its light rolling to Sarah, her throat slashed, blood pooling in the leaves, face frozen in a scream. Alex lay nearby, arms twisted unnaturally, guts spilling out, the relic clutched in his stiff hand. A growl rumbled behind him. Low, wet, vibrating the air. David spun, the beam catching it. The creature from the statue, alive, its bark-like skin peeling, red eyes blazing like coals. Claws glinted, slashing at him. He ducked, the tips grazing his back, hot pain searing through. He bolted, branches whipping his face, crashing into a hollow tree. He curled inside, breath ragged, the growls circling, claws scraping bark inches away. Dawn broke gray and cold, the forest silent. David crawled out, shaking, the creature gone. He stumbled back to camp, the relic abandoned in Alex's hand. His friends' bodies lay where had left them, flies buzzing over the gore. He dug shallow graves with a camp shovel, hands blistering, tears streaking his face, whispering, "I'm sorry," over and over. The hike out blurred. Hours of staggering through the trees, thorns snagging his clothes, the weight of their deaths crushing him. He hit the highway, flagged a trucker, and made it home, collapsing in his apartment. The city's hum a stark contrast to the forest's hush. Sleep brought nightmares, red eyes, growls, his friends' voices calling from the dark. Weeks later, he walked downtown, trying to shake the ghosts. A figure caught his eye across the street. Alex, alive, laughing with a stranger. David froze, heart slamming against his ribs. "Alex!" he shouted, running over. Alex turned, confusion creasing his face. "Do I know you, man?" His voice was flat, eyes empty. David's stomach dropped. "The forest, Mike, Sarah, away." Alex backed away, shaking his head. "Get lost, creep!" He vanished into the crowd, leaving David reeling, the relic's glow flashing in his mind. Something was wrong. Dead wrong. And it wasn't over yet. David stood frozen on the bustling city street, the hum of traffic fading as Alex's cold dismissal echoed in his head. He'd buried Alex, seen his guts spilled across the forest floor. So was he here, alive and acting like they'd never met? His hands shook as he dialed Sarah's number, a desperate hope clawing at him. It rang once, twice, then her voice, bright, unfamiliar, answered. "Who's this?" David stammered. "Sarah? It's me, David." From the trip, she cut him off, sharp and curt. "Wrong number, buddy. Don't call again." The line went dead. He stumbled to a bench, mind racing. A shadow flitted across the pavement, too tall, too thin, gone when he blinked. "I'm losing it," he muttered, rubbing his eyes. But the memory of those red eyes in the forest burned bright, and a whisper slithered through the crowd. Mine, low and guttural, chilling his spine. That night, he broke into Sarah's apartment, her address still etched in his memory from group texts. The lock clicked under his shaky hands, the door creaking open to a sterile space. Furniture new, walls bare. No hiking gear, no photos of them. A picture frame on the counter showed her smiling with strangers. No trace of him or the others. A rustle came from the bedroom. He froze, heart pounding. But it was just curtains swaying in the breeze. Still, he swore he saw her reflection in the glass, eyes glowing red for a split second. Sleep brought no relief. David's dreams plunged him back into the forest, the creature looming, its bark-like skin peeling claws, dripping black sap. "Bring it back," it growled, voice echoing in his skull. He woke drenched in sweat. The relic shape burned into his mind. The clock read 3:17 a.m. A thud hit the floor. His hiking boots toppled over, laces untied like someone had touched them. He scoured online forums. Renault sleep, creepy threads, finding tales of cursed woods and things that wear faces. A post chilled him. It doesn't kill you all. It takes some, uses them. His phone buzzed, an unknown number texting. "Look outside." He yanked the curtains back. Alex stood across the street, staring up, unblinking, then turned and walked away. David tracked Alex to a dive bar the next night, the relic's weight a phantom in his pocket. Alex sat alone, nursing a beer, his posture stiff. "Alex, we need to talk," David said, sliding into the booth. Alex's head snapped up, eyes narrowing. "Told you I don't know you." His voice was flat, but his fingers twitched, then glowed red, faint, like embers under skin. David lunged, grabbing his arm. "Where's the relic?" Alex shoved him hard, unnatural strength sending David crashing into a table. "Back off!" Alex snarled, eyes flaring red, before storming out. David's apartment became a war zone. Locks double-checked, windows taped shut. He dug through his pack, finding a crumpled map of the forest, the temple marked in red. A whisper hissed from the walls. "Mine, mine," overlapping, relentless. He smashed a mirror to stop it, shards scattering, his reflection showing scratches on his neck. 3 jagged lines, fresh, bleeding. He tailed Sarah to her job at a coffee shop, watching from across the street. She moved mechanically, serving customers, but her smile was too wide, teeth glinting oddly. A coworker bumped her. Her eyes flashed red, just for a heartbeat, then dulled. David's grew twisted. They weren't his friends anymore. At Mike's old gym, he found him lifting weights, alive, oblivious. "Mike, it's David," he pleaded, blocking his path. Mike stared through him. "Blank, never seen you before." A trainer dragged David out, but not before he saw Mike's shadow stretch. Long, twisted, claw-like. Then snapped back. Dreams worsened. The creature's voice clearer. "Return what's mine, or they stay mine. Or they stay mine." David woke to footsteps pacing his room, heavy and deliberate, but no one was there. His fridge door hung open, claw marks gouged into the metal, dripping something dark and sticky. Not blood, worse. He cornered Alex again, outside a grocery store, desperation boiling over. "I know you're not you," David hissed, grabbing his collar. Alex's eyes glowed bright red, his grin splitting wide. Too wide, teeth sharp. "You shouldn't have come back." he growled, voice layered with the creature's rumble. He swung, fist cracking David's jaw, sending him sprawling. The relic fell from Alex's pocket. David snatched it, bolting as Alex's roar chased him down the street. David locked himself in, the relic cold in his hand, pulsing faintly. A knock rattled the door. Sarah's voice soft, pleading. "Let me in, Dave. We're worried." He peeked through the peephole. Her face pressed close, eyes red, unblinking. A predator's grin stretching her lips. "Mine," she whispered, clawing the wood. He grabbed his keys, the map, a kitchen knife, anything, and headed for the Jeep. The city blurred past, streetlights flickering, shadows darting in his mirrors. A call from Mike buzzed his phone. "Where you going, man?" His voice wrong, layered, laughing. David tossed it out the window, tires screeching toward the forest. The tree line loomed, dark and silent, welcoming him back. He clutched the relic, heart slamming, knowing the creature was waiting, using his friends, pulling him in. A growl rumbled through the woods, low and hungry, as he stepped inside, the conspiracy tightening its grip. David's Jeep screeched to a halt at the forest's edge, tires kicking up gravel as the headlights cut through the dark. The trees loomed tall and silent, their branches swaying without wind, like they'd been waiting for him. He clutched the relic, its cold weight pulsing in his hand, and grabbed the kitchen knife from the passenger seat, his only weapon. "This ends tonight," he muttered, stepping into the woods, the growl from his nightmares rumbling low in the distance. The path to the temple was a blur of thorns and shadows, the air thick with rot, and something metallic. A whisper hissed through the leaves. "Mine!" Sharp and furious, rattling his nerves. He pushed forward, flashlight beam trembling, catching claw marks gouged into trunks, fresh sap dripping like blood. Footsteps crunched behind him. He spun, knife raised, but the trail was empty, just shadows stretching too long. The temple emerged from the gloom, its mossy walls cracked, the statue's red eyes glowing brighter than before. David's heart slammed against his ribs as he stepped inside, the relic's pulse sensing with his own. "Come out, you bastard!" he shouted, voice echoing off the stone. A roar answered, deep, guttural, shaking the floor, dust raining from the ceiling. It stepped from the shadows, the creature, taller than he remembered, its bark-like skin peeling in strips, revealing black, oozing flesh beneath. Its claws glinted, long and jagged, red eyes blazing like twin fires. "You brought it back!" It snarled, voice a gravelly rasp that clawed at his mind. But it's not enough. It lunged, claws slashing at his chest. David dodged, the tips grazing his arm, hot pain flaring. He swung the knife, slashing its side. Black ichor sprayed, sizzling on the stone floor. The creature screeched, a sound like splintering wood, and swatted him back, sending him crashing into the pedestal. The relic clattered free, rolling toward the statue. He scrambled up, lungs burning as it advanced, its form shifting, limbs twisting, tendrils sprouting from its back, writhing like snakes. "You can't save them," it growled, jaws unhinging with a sickening crack, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. A tendril lashed out, wrapping his ankle. He stabbed it, ichor spurting, and broke free, diving for the relic. The ground trembled, roots bursting through the floor, coiling toward him. "The forest fights too," he yelled, hacking at them with the knife, sap spraying like blood. The creature roared again, charging. David rolled aside, its claws smashing the pedestal, stone exploding in shards. He grabbed a broken spear from the debris, a jagged piece of wood, and gripped the relic tight. "Let them go," he screamed, driving the spear at its chest. It caught the shaft, snapping it, but David ducked under its arm, jamming the relic into its gaping maw. The creature gagged, red eyes widening, thrashing as the stone lodged deep. Rot snaked up his legs, pinning him. He slashed free, adrenaline pumping, and tackled it, forcing the spear's splintered end into its chest. Black ichor gushed, soaking his hands, the creature's roar turning to a wail, high and piercing, rattling his skull. "Die already!" he yelled, twisting the wood deeper. The temple shook, cracks spiderwebbing up the walls. The creature convulsed, tendrils flailing, then collapsed, its body dissolving into ash and sludge. red eyes dimming to black. The roots stilled, the relic falling from its jaws, cracked but dark, its glow gone. David stumbled back, chest heaving, the silence deafening. He staggered outside, knife dripping ichor, the forest eerily calm. No growls, no whispers. A rustle stirred the bushes. He tensed, but Alex emerged, alive, blinking in confusion. David, Sarah followed. Then Mike, their faces pale but human, eyes clear. What happened? Sarah asked, voice shaky. David dropped the knife, relief crashing over him. It's over. I killed it. They hugged him. Tears mixing with dirt. Their warmth real. Too real after months of doubt. You saved us, Alex said, clapping his shoulder, a faint smile breaking through. The temple crumbled behind them, dust rising into the dawn sky. They trekked out, leaning on each other, the forest parting like it was letting them go. David glanced back. The statue's eyes were dull, lifeless. He'd won, hadn't he? But as they hit the jeep, a faint whisper brushed his ear. Mine, so soft he might have imagined it, chilling his blood. The forest lay still as David led Alex, Sarah, and Mike away from the temple's ruins, the dawn sky bleeding pale light through the trees. His hands trembled, slick with black ichor, the kitchen knife abandoned in the dirt behind them. Alex clapped his shoulder, voice rough but warm. Man, I don't know how you pulled that off, but I owe you. Sarah nodded, her arms wrapped tight around herself, while Mike trailed silently, rubbing his neck like he'd just woken from a bad dream. David forced a smile, the relic's cracked shell heavy in his pocket. Yeah, it's done. Let's just get out of here. But his eyes darted to the shadows, too still, too watchful. A rustle stirred the leaves, faint and fleeting. He spun, heart kicking. But it was just a squirrel darting up a trunk. Jumpy much, Alex teased, but his laugh sounded forced. The jeep waited at the trailhead, dust-coated and real, a lifeline to the world beyond. They piled in, David behind the wheel, the engine rumbling to life. Sarah leaned against the window, staring at the forest's edge. I thought we were goners, she murmured, her breath fogging the glass. A shadow flickered in the rearview mirror, tall, thin, gone when David blinked. The drive back to the city was quiet, the radio crackling static before Mike switched it off. Feels like a lifetime ago, he said, voice low, breaking the silence. David nodded, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Yeah, let's keep it that way. He dropped them off. Alex at his downtown loft, Sarah at her apartment, Mike at his gym, each parting with a shaky hug, promises to grab beers soon. Alone in his place, David collapsed on the couch, the relic on the coffee table, its cracks glinting in the lamplight. He showered, scrubbing the ichor and dirt away, but the scratches on his neck, 3 jagged lines, stayed raw, stinging under the water. Just a scar, he muttered, toweling off, though his reflection in the mirror looked hollow, eyes sunken. A knock rattled the door. He froze, pulse spiking. Dave, it's us, Alex's voice called, casual and loud. David opened it, finding them all there, Alex with a 6-pack, Sarah with pizza, Mike with a grin. Figured we owed you a night, Sarah said, brushing past. They sprawled across his living room, laughing, eating, the tension melting away. To surviving, Alex toasted, raising a beer, and they clinked bottles, the sound sharp in the quiet. The night stretched on, the TV droning a dumb comedy. But David's gut wouldn't settle. Sarah's laugh hit a weird pitch, too high, too long, stopping abruptly when she caught him staring. What? Stopping abruptly when she caught him? What? She asked, smiling, but her teeth glinted oddly, sharper than he remembered. He shook it off. Nothing. Tired. Mike stretched, yawning, his shadow on the wall, stretching too far. Claws flickering at the edges, then snapping back. David blinked hard, chalking it up to exhaustion. Alex leaned over, whispering, You're a damn hero, man. But his breath smelled faintly of rot, not beer. David forced a nod, sipping his drink, the relic's weight pressing on his mind. A thud came from the kitchen. The pizza box fallen, sauce smeared like blood across the floor. Clumsy me, Sarah giggled, cleaning it up, but her fingers lingered on the stain, tracing it slowly. David's throat tightened. He grabbed the relic, slipping it into a drawer. "Let's call it a night," he said, voice tight. They left, waving from the hall, their footsteps echoing too loud, too rhythmic. David locked the door, double-checking the bolt. The apartment silent save for the hum of the fridge. He sat, staring at the drawer, a whisper brushing his ear. "Mine?" So faint he might have dreamed it. Sleep came heavy. The forest invading his dreams. The creature's ash reforming, red eyes flaring. He woke to a scratching sound. Slow, deliberate, coming from the drawer. He yanked it open. The relic sat still, cracked but whole, no glow. "Get a grip," he muttered, slamming it shut, but his neck scratches itched, warm to the touch. The next day he met them for coffee, testing the waters. Alex cracked jokes, Sarah scrolled her phone, Mike sipped quietly. All normal, almost too normal. But Sarah's eyes caught the light. Red, just for a heartbeat, before she smiled, soft and warm. "You okay, Dave?" she asked, voice sweet, but her fingers tapped the table, a rhythm like claws on stone. David nodded, forcing a grin. "Yeah, just beat." They hugged goodbye, her grip lingering, nails digging slightly into his back. As they walked off, Alex glanced back. His shadow twisted, tendrils curling, then shrank. David's breath hitched. The forest was gone, but its mark wasn't. David sat on his couch, the relic locked in the drawer, its cracked surface a silent taunt. The city hummed outside, cars honking, lights buzzing, but it felt like a thin veil over something darker. His neck scratches burned, 3 jagged lines pulsing under his fingertips. "It's over," he whispered, but the words rang hollow. The coffee meet-up with Alex, Sarah, and Mike replayed in his mind. Those fleeting red glints in their eyes, the 2 wide smiles. He shook it off, grabbing a beer, the cold bottle grounding him. A thud hit the wall. Sharp, sudden, he froze, bottle halfway to his lips, eyes darting. The TV flickered on, static buzzing, a low growl leaking through the speakers. "Mine," it hissed, layered with Sarah's voice. He yanked the plug, heart racing, but the whisper lingered, echoing in the silence. Sleep brought nightmares, the creature's ash swirling, reforming, its claws sinking into his friend's flesh, their faces twisting into its grin. He jolted awake, sweat-soaked, to a scratching at the window. Slow, deliberate. He yanked the curtains back, nothing but his reflection, eyes flickering red for a heartbeat, then dulling. "No," he gasped, stumbling back. The scratches on his neck now warm, wet with something black. Days blurred. Work, home, avoiding mirrors. He scoured our no-sleep, finding threads about. Things that wear you. Survivors warning of marks that spread. His phone buzzed. An unknown text. "Look outside." Alex stood across the street, staring, unblinking, then walked off, his shadow trailing tendrils. A news alert pinged. Barista found dead near Sarah's coffee shop. Throat slashed, eyes gouged out. David's stomach dropped. He drove there, parking in the lot, watching. Sarah emerged, pale, her grin splitting too wide, red eyes glinting under the streetlight. A stranger followed her, dazed, then vanished into an alley. "She's not her," he muttered, hands shaking. His phone lit up. A video, no sender. It showed the temple's ruins. Sarah standing over the ash, chanting, "Mine!" The creature rose, merging into her, its claws hers now. The screen cut to static, his reflection staring back, eyes glowing red, just for a second. He dropped it, the realization crashing in. He hadn't killed it. He'd set it free. That night, a knock, soft, insistent. "Dave, it's me," Sarah's voice cooed. He peeked through the peephole. Her face pressed close, eyes red, unblinking, claws tapping the door. "Let me in," she growled. The creatures rumbled beneath her words. He backed away, knife in hand, as the lock clicked, unturning on its own. She stepped in, Alex and Mike behind, their grins matching hers, eyes blazing. "You can't run," Alex said, voice wrong, layered. David's scratches flared, his vision tinting red. He stabbed the air, screaming, "Get out!" But they just laughed, closing in. The forest hadn't let go. It lived in them, and now, in him.